is Slow Food Live. My name is Giselle. If you are not familiar with Slow Food Live or Slow Food USA is our national entity of Slow Food International. Slow Food is a global food movement, and we advocate for good, clean, and fair food for all, which of course means a lot of things, and that includes beverages. So I'm really excited that we get to spend this hour talking about beverages, craft beverages, or however you want to call it, very much slow. And Slow Food Live is our way of bringing slow food into your home. As we started this in March when something else started, but we've decided to just keep going because the content has been really, really fun and interesting and enriching, and we get to bring together people from all over the world to join us for these sessions. Today is our first session of our partnership with 10 Speed Press and Clarkson Potter, and I'm really, really excited about this, not only because I am personally a very big fan of these books, but because the lineup of presenters and authors that we have is just remarkable. So I am really excited to have you here with us today, Brad. I'm really excited about this partnership. Thanks to 10 Speed Press and Clarkson Potter for joining us on Slow Food Live and bringing us the likes of Brad Thomas Parsons. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. Brad is coming to us from Brooklyn, New York. He's going to talk all about Amaro. If you have questions, please put your questions in the Q&A box. So on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you're going to see a little button that says Q&A. Go ahead and click that and open it up. Whenever you come up with a question, put it in that box. They're really hard to track in the chat. But if you want to just send some love to Brad or comment and conversate with the other folks that are participating in this webinar about the cocktail or whatever it is, do that in the chat. I will throw some links in the chat as Brad mentions his books and the ingredients you'll need to make the cocktails we're doing today. So keep an eye on both, have those both open if you are on a computer. And without further ado, Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited to learn from you, and I'll let you take it from here.
All right, thank you, Giselle. I'm really excited to be here tonight and kick off this series. And sorry, I'm just changing my view here so I see myself. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk all about Amaro. That's the name of this panel. But first, let me tell you a few things about myself for those of you who don't know me. And thanks for friends and new people alike for tuning in. I saw in the Q&A a lot of people, or the chat, telling where they're from, and that's really amazing. So many people are joining us tonight. My name is Brad Thomas Parsons. I am a writer and author of 4 books, seen behind me here. I mostly write about cocktails and booze, and there's my cat Lewis making his first cameo of the night. Maybe we'll bring him up later. So my first book was called Bitters, and I wrote that in 2011, almost 10 years ago, 9 now, I think. And that was all about these kind of bitters, aromatic bitters, non-potable bitters, the bitters that you apply to a cocktail or food and dashes and drops as a flavoring agent, versus potable bitters, which is Amaro that you drink. And then Amaro followed that 5 years later in 2016. And the story of those 2 books is very similar in how they unite with this key word I use a lot, demystify. So both topics, there wasn't a lot of information about either topic in one place, and they were becoming very popular with bartenders. And bartenders often lead the charge in trends where they're all about the new stuff first, or bringing back the old things in new ways, which they did both with bitters and Amaro. And then it trickles down to cocktail geeks and the media, and then the general public. So I find a lot of people have said, like, you should have written Amaro this year because everyone's into it. But the idea was to get ahead of it and hold people's hands and help explain it about them. I wrote a little book here called Distillery Cats, which has been a fan favorite. That came out in 2017. That's a tribute to working cats all around America, working at breweries and distilleries. It's sort of, I call it Profiles in Courage, but with cats. And it was a lot of fun to write. And then my most recent book is Last Call, which came out last fall, October 22nd. We're coming upon the year anniversary. And this was my love letter to bartenders around America, as seen through closing time at bars. Special things happen late at night at bars. In Last Call, there's 2 very interesting words. They're symbolic, but they also represent many different things in terms of it's a transitory time. It's the end of a shift for a bartender, but it's they're coming down from the night and winding down. While for the customer, it's their you can't stay here, but you have to go home, but you can't stay here moment. And through this, we asked bartenders what their final drink would be, and that opened a whole lot of questions on life and mortality and the world, and now especially with so many bars closed, many unfortunately permanently. Several in the book are gone forever, so to speak. It's kind of sad that the book is a time capsule of sort, but I'm glad that I was able to travel the country to over 83 bars across America and tell these stories, and they're forever between these two covers. But tonight we're going to talk about Amaro, and see if I can do that without. So Amaro. So for this book, my photographer Ed Anderson from Petaluma, California, shout out to Ed. He's photographed all my books, and we traveled to Italy, around America, just meeting the producers of many of these brands of Amaro, people whose names are on the labels, and it was really fascinating because a lot of the Italians were very they weren't nervous, but they were like, why is he asking us all these questions? No one cares about Amaro. It's a dusty old grandpa's drink, so to speak, and he doesn't speak Italian. No one's going to care. And then when the book came out, they saw that all that work we did turned into a good story, and they trusted us in terms of becoming unofficial ambassadors for the category, which has been great. So before I go into more details on Amaro, if you were at my house right now or my apartment, I would offer you a drink. So with that said, I'm going to make the first drink of the night. I'm going to try to make several that demonstrates the versatility of Amaro. The first is going to be a simple highball, and when I make the drink, I'm going to tilt my camera down so you can see the workstation here, but not my head. So a highball essentially is a spirit with some kind of carbonated mixer. Think rum and coke, gin and tonic, 7 and 7, scotch and soda. Right now, there's a big I love like Japanese style highballs, which come in all sorts of formats, from canned to bottled to frosty steins right from the freezer, and they're all really terrific. So for an Amaro highball, like most people think of Amaro as a digestif, but it can be used in many different ways. So in this case, we're going to use an Amaro as an aperitivo. Well, normally you would use Campari or a red bitter. We're going to take something a little darker and more mysterious and lighten it up. So you can use all sorts of different things. Tonight I'm going to use Amaro Moletti from Ascoli Piceno in the Marche region of Italy. The Molettis are known for they're a anisette family. Their anisette is known worldwide, but they've made this Amaro as well. This is it's floral. It has saffron in it, violet flower. It has a slightly cola taste at times, but it's just very fragrant and is really versatile. So I would start, 1.5 ounces is fine. You can amp it up to 2 if you want to, but 1.5 is good for kind of a quote unquote long drink like this. And for the glassware, you can use a rocks glass, you can use a Collins glass. I like to use these kind of bistro style glasses. So with the simplicity of ingredients, it's important normally, especially with a Japanese highball, to treat it very special. Use the best ice, a chilled glass, all of that. So right now we put in the Amaro, and my hands I've already washed, and it's just me here tonight. So then we're going to add some ice in there, and then put a mixer in. So you can put tonic water, soda water. Tonight I'm going to use mineral water, Topo Chico. And you put about 3 ounces, or kind of, fill it up to the top a bit. And some bartenders, rather than topping a drink, they bottom a drink where they pour this in first and then top it with the Amaro. I've always just done this method. And then for a garnish, citrus is the obvious choice here, whether you want to use orange zest, a lemon zest, even a grapefruit zest, or you can go the way of the wedge and add like a wedge of citrus. So I'm just going to have this like little lemon twist. And then sometimes in Italy with spritzes, they add a little salinity via an olive. So I'm going to drop an olive in there tonight. And then you can give it a brief stir without, you don't want to disrupt the bubbles too much fast, just a quick stir. And then this is an Amaro highball. And so you can do this with any Amaro, any kind of mixer, whether it's ginger ale, tonic water, etc. So with that, it's off to a good start. The thing about this nice about this too, it's fairly low ABV, alcohol by volume. So it's a great drink to start the evening with, and it's very refreshing, and it's delicious. So now a little bit about it. The next cocktail I'll make, I'm going to demonstrate a shaken drink. I'll do that momentarily. But so Amaro, so what is it? Kind of for those of you who don't know or confused or want more information on it. Essentially, it's the Italian word for bitter, but it represents this class of bittersweet herbal liqueurs from Italy that were traditionally served as a digestif, whether usually neat in a glass, sometimes a chilled glass, sometimes with ice. And it's made by macerating a neutral spirit traditionally with bittering agents, we call those, like cinchona bark or gentian or wormwood, kind of barks and roots to bring a bitterness. And then there's flavoring agents brought in, whether it's via flowers, citrus, other kind of botanicals, seeds, spices get mixed in. It's left to macerate. There's different methods of maceration that many different brands use. The brands are very proprietary for the most part with their methods and traditions. But essentially, there's maceration, infusion, percolation. So sometimes they're macerated in water separately. Sometimes they're together in a spirit. Sometimes water is poured over them. It's all about extracting the flavor at different amounts of time and to bring it through there. And then there's sometimes it's strained out. A sweetener is added, traditionally like a sugar. Sometimes honey is used or another sweetener, and then they're left to rest for a while. Sometimes barrel aged. Most Amaro makers in Italy don't barrel age except for Fernette Branca and Braulio, but it's much more common. So as I mentioned, and then one thing too to note too, what I love about this category and what can be frustrating and challenging is that every bottle is a singular experience. So I'm going to talk about these different categories of Amaro or styles, but within those, because these are proprietary recipes driven by different regions and different ingredients historically, they all taste different. So it can be challenging to try to learn a lot about the category with so many different things, because if you're making a drink, each bottle is going to taste different. So if you made that highball tonight with a different Amaro, it's going to taste different than the one I just made with Moletti for many different reasons. But historically, Amaro was driven by the regions in Italy. So Southern style Amaro was usually a little sweeter because it had more citrus in it. It was rich with citrus, oranges, lemons, pomegranate, and kind of Mediterranean style herbs. The North had more access through the trade routes to new botanicals coming into the country. So they had a lot more ingredients, and they were typically a little more warming because it was colder. But then there's different styles for the Alpine and coastal and Southern. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And if you have any questions, again, we'll answer them throughout if pertinent, or I will handle them at the end as well. But when it's just me talking, it's funny. So I hope you're all hearing this, enjoying this so far. So bitter, the big thing about bitter is it's a scary word to a lot of people. So as bartenders know, when you're describing a drink, or something new to someone, you say, oh, it's bitter. People aren't going to necessarily jump to that like we do sugar, sweetness, and things where we're drawn to. Because historically, we are hardwired to consider bitter a warning sign that something is toxic, that's bad. We have to learn to love bitters, as a flavor, so to speak. But years of evolution have changed that, and we're trying different things, with bitter, especially through food, with dark chocolate, bitter greens, hoppy IPAs. So bitter is becoming more appreciated, and I think the Negroni especially really helped over the last decade plus help people embrace bitter in the glass. It's this, if you've never, it's made with Campari, which is very bitter, very herbal, with a sweet vermouth, which is herbaceous, and a gin, which gives it a big kick, equal parts, and it's delicious. It's one of my favorite drinks. But when you're new to it, it can be like, ooh, I don't like this. So to take the scariness out of it, it's important to remember that when we say Amaro, we're mostly talking about bittersweet because, again, there's that sweet element in there with the botanicals and the spirits. So, so some lean towards very sweet and some are more dry. There's only a handful that are extremely bitter on their own, but it's all about like what these bring, you know, on their own, and then how you use them in a cocktail. Amaro's origins, as with many kind of elixirs, go back to medieval era, way before that with ancient Rome, but more recent, quote unquote, history recent, is with medieval monks and friars. They had the knowledge of botany and tended the gardens, and they created elixirs and medicine and would often trade or sell those to the local community. And it was a way for a lot of these involved the appetite, the stomach, whether to aid digestion or to spark an appetite, to get you excited to try something or to eat again if you were sick. But the knowledge of botany was really key to that. And these bitters and tonics and elixirs were known throughout the land, but often kept in their local community. Each place would do their own style. But then there was an anti-clericism movement throughout Italy's history where Amaro followed this trajectory from elixir medicine to, you know, post-World War II. No, I'm sorry, the 19th century, after the anti-clericism movement, it involved more to commercial production, but it was often sold at pharmacies. So it was still seen as medicine, but it was after World War II in particular that it went from being sold at pharmacies to being enjoyed on its own and being purchased to consume for pleasure. And a big reason for that was, you know, Italy went through years of austerity with the war and how that tore up their country. And suddenly, you know, post World War II, as we get into that, you know, La Dolce Vita era where people were going out again and drinking and eating and going to the cafes, richer food was being consumed, and that's one reason people suspect Amaro rose. But it's also World War II also saw the end of many Amaro producers. So they just, because whether their factories were used for the war effort, they were destroyed, or they just went out of business. So there's still a lot of Amaro producers throughout Italy, but that had a big deal to do with it. So I'm going to quickly, let's see what time we get. Let me make, are you up for another drink? Take a little break from the talking. So I'm going to make one of my favorite drinks from Amaro. And I don't know if I can get it to look quite like the photo in the book, but this is a drink from, I modeled the specs on one of Jeffrey Morgenthaler, a great Portland bartender. It's called the Amaro Sour. And there's a beautiful photo from Ed Anderson. So essentially, Jeffrey had a drink called, he made the Amaro Sour better than it needed to be. So he went back to this kind of treacly, sweet, sugary drink, and he found by adding a high proof bourbon and playing around with the specs that it really changed the dynamics of the drink. And so instead of amaretto, I try this with Amaro. So I'm going to make you that right now. I'm going to walk to my refrigerator to get the chilled glass. It's always important to chill your glasses before you serve them or make a cocktail. It helps a lot. Be right back. All right, so we have a chilled frosted double old fashioned or a big rocks glass, and then what we're gonna do is, this is gonna be a shake and drink. So we're gonna make this in the shaker. I use, you know, the Boston shaker you often see is a tin with a pint glass. I prefer these two tins, as many bartenders do. It's safer, things don't break, they stay better together. So we're going to start with the Amaro, and in this case, you know, the recipe I have in the book, it's for any Amaro, because again, like, I love this versatility. You could make it with any of those. So I'm going to pull out tonight this new Amaro to the market from Faccio Bruto, made here in Brooklyn, called Alpino Amaro. So this is an Alpine style Amaro, which traditionally means it's using herbs and botanicals, you know, grown and harvested at mountain level, but also the flavor profile typically implies this nice après-ski vibe where it's this beautiful just off the slopes, because that's from having, in this case, you know, Patrick Miller, who's the creator of this, he uses different pine needles. There's eucalyptus in there, a lot of bitter gentian. And so we're going to put a 1.5 ounces of Amaro, in this case, this Alpino Amaro. So 1.5 ounces in the tin. And then we're going to add some bourbon to give it a little more backbone to the Amaro. And it's just 3/4 ounce. And Jeff likes to use a higher proof bourbon. In this case, I have this great from Highwire Distilling in Charleston, South Carolina. Scott Blackwell and Ann Marshall are the owners of this, and they're you know, full transparency, good friends of mine. But this bourbon, if you don't know about it, this one in particular is 100% Jimmy Red Corn, which was a heirloom corn variety that Scott and Ann, along with some college professors and Sean Brock and a lot of other people, brought this back. So this is new. It's been out a few years now, and it's a little steep at the liquor store. It'll cost you a bit, but it's well worth it. And it's a good sipping one. All right, so we add the bourbon, and then gonna put some lemon juice in there. Always use, you know, fresh. I didn't prep my lemon juice in advance, so I'm gonna squeeze in here. Pardon me, bartenders. I'm sorry I'm doing it with my hand like this. And we just want a 1 ounce of that, so it's about a whole lemon in there. And then I am going to put that, and we'll strain those seeds out in a bit. Oh, and you know what I did mess up? I'll do a reverse dry shake. You're supposed to put the egg white in. My apologies, friends. You're supposed to put the egg white in first and dry shake it. I'm going to do a reverse dry shake where we'll make the spirit first. I'll dump that and then put the egg white in. So then just a 1/4 ounce or like a bar spoon of simple syrup. And then that whole egg white, which is reserved right now. So I am going to fill this shaker with ice. And give that a little shake. How's Ray doing?
Judging from this chat, I think everyone's doing really, really well. I'm going to ask you one question that came through because it's specific, 2 questions that are specific to this cocktail. You said you could use it with any Amaro, and Nathan is wondering if you would be comfortable using a non-Italian bitter liqueur like, I'm sure I'll say this wrong, Krauter liqueur.
Oh yeah, so that's a German style bitter. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I know this isn't the full lesson tonight, but you know, I'm mostly focused on Italy and some of the domestic Amaro. But yeah, many European countries have that bitter tradition of that. So it's totally fine to use that. You know, they're all going to go different directions. So you just want to taste it first, but think if it plays well with bourbon as well. And you can also make this sour with rum instead of bourbon. That's another thing to consider. So let me just dump this ice. I'll be right back. Okay. And so now I'm going to do, like I said, I kind of messed this one up. Not messed it up, but I did it different. Normally you would put the egg white in, all the ingredients, and shake it without ice. I kind of messed that up, but we're going to see how my reverse dry shake goes. So now there's no ice in here. We're just trying to aerate that egg white. And I think when you do this, it's going to be harder to open too. So hopefully I won't mess this up on the air. And so a whiskey sour, because it has this egg white in it, which is going to be foamy, would traditionally be served up in a coupe glass. But I like this old school style, like Jeff Morgenthaler does, where it is in a rocks glass, you know, over ice. And there's something kind of just old school about that. So, all right, so we have the glass with ice. And now let's see if we can kind of maintain some of that foaminess a little bit. All right, so There we go, it's a little bit. So it's not as foamy as it should be. My apologies for that. Sorry, Jeff. And then for the garnish, I didn't do this one a la minute. I prepped this one for the sake of time, but I like doing, if you say, like a lemon peel with a nice cherry in there. And so this is one of my favorite Amaro cocktails. And the egg white might scare people, but use a fresh one. You can also use non-egg white alternatives, like people use the chickpea juice, aguafaba, is that the, and but yeah, so I'm gonna have a sip of this one. All right. Well, that's good. The Alpine. Normally, I do this with what I call a gateway Amaro. This kind of little more like not too bitter, not too sweet. This really comes through in this, where it's kind of woodsy and forest floor, and it's on the drier side. It's not as sweet as some of the other Amari I would use in this. So it's interesting to see where that takes you. Okay, is that fun? So now I'm going to talk about what I call the tricky taxonomy of Amaro, these different categories. And like, unlike whiskey, beer, wine, and other spirits categories, there is no, in the States, in the EU, there is rules about what makes a liqueur, but all Amaro kind of falls under that umbrella. But, like you think of Italy with all of these, they have all this protection of their mozzarella and their cheeses and their hams, and their wines, and they never did that with Amaro. So a lot of Italians think it can only be called Amaro if it's made in Italy, but as I say in the book, the genie's out of the bottle. In that case, so Amaro's, say there's German, Mexican Amaro, a lot in the U.S. I'm going to talk about, but this classification is so broad and loosely defined that different producers will talk about their Amaro in different ways, but they also don't always like to compare themselves to others. But the first thing to talk about is Aperitivo bitters, these red bitters. The most famous one is Campari. And so these Aperitivo style drinks in Italy, not necessarily the Negroni is a cocktail, but it's a little too spirituous to be an aperitivo for most. So we're talking about the spritzes and the Campari and soda, and it's nice that now that there's different options. Like Campari has a distinctive taste, so if you taste Negroni without Campari, it's going to taste different, but that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. One of my favorite red bitters on the market, and a U.S. one, again made in Brooklyn. Sorry for all the Brooklyn bias tonight, but by Four Tap Spirits. This one is all natural dye, and it's just, I love this on its own with rocks and orange, sometimes just with a little soda in it. So normally I would open the night with a Negroni Sbagliato, which is one of my favorite cocktails. It's like a Negroni, but instead of gin, it has Prosecco, but I want to mix it up with that highball. So you have the Aperitivo bitters, and then what I call light. And by light, I don't necessarily mean ABV, but I mean the entryway to it, the taste of it. So I would call that Maletti we had light, where it's just a nice one to start with. Another one I'm going to make a cocktail with, if we have time, is Amaro Nonino. So this has a nice sweetness to it and herbaceousness that comes through, but it's sweet and it won't scare you away. And probably the biggest dip your toe in the water of the world of Amaro is Amara Montenegro. For years, it was the most popular Amaro in Italy. It's very floral, orange, citrus, has a cucumber taste to it as well. The bartender favorite. So that's the light. And then the medium, I call, this kind of the Goldilocks, where it's not too bitter, not too sweet, just right. And especially with the medium, these Amaro are very interchangeable. So like a Verna, we're going to use in a bit. This is from Sicily. Sicily's best known, Amaro export. It is cola-like, herbaceous, but very citrus forward. Again, I mentioned before those blood oranges and the lemons, and there's pomegranate peel in here. It's really delicious. And then like Amaro Lucano, you can even see like the color is very similar. The labels kind of, they don't wink at each other, but the same template. These guys are from the Vena family is from Pasticci in the Basilicata region, which is southern Italy. And I've got to visit many of these we've talked about already tonight. I've visited the distilleries where they make them, met the families, and we're talking about the fourth, fifth, sixth generation of producers. Lucano has sort of a cinnamon licorice taste to it. So this one will be a little sweeter. This one might have different kind of herbs coming through, but you could make a sour with these two. And those are very much, as I said, like gateway Amaro, where if you want to learn about that, start with something like that. Don't go for a crazy, because the spectrum of flavors goes from the sweet citrus to woodsy to medicinal to forest floor. It's all over the place, which is exciting, but it's a little confusing. And then we have Alpine Amaro. So I briefly talked about Patrick's Amaro. This is probably the best known Braulio from on the Swiss border in the Alps in Italy. I got to visit here, which was amazing. They took us on a foraging hike, which turned out to be like this 6-mile walk, which they almost had a chopper lift me out of there, but I did enjoy it very much. This is the classic après ski. You have a sip and it's like, it just washes over you. So I'm more of the fake cast in the ski lodge kind of guy with this, but it's lovely. It can be a little challenging in cocktails, just like Fernet can, because it's very a dominant flavor and it's delicious. And then Carciofo, which it means artichoke. So that's the category where artichoke is the key ingredient. And you can see there, what do we have on the bottle? Big old artichokes. This is Cynar, not Cynar. I hear a lot of people say Cynar. Cynar was originally from Padua, and now it's part of the Campari, Gruppo Campari portfolio. So it's made in different places, but mostly outside of Milano. This is low ABV. It's only 16.5% alcohol. So it's really dynamic that you can have it with like this and soda in a spritz. It's in so many cocktails too. Like it's a bartender favorite. And I recently did a story on Aperitivo, comparing like the mashup of Aperitivo and tiki culture, and Cynar is a big drink. There's a couple more artichoke-based Amaro on the market, mostly from the States, from like Don Chicho y Fili in Washington, D.C. It has one, but Cynar is kind of the category killer in that. And then Rababaro, which stands for the rhubarb. Rhubarb root is the key ingredient. And rhubarb root can be naturally smoky. And in this case, this Amaro Sfumato, Sfumato is a derivation of flame. This is like mezcal, not all mezcal smoky, but it's like a peaty scotch or a mezcal, goes very well with it. And this just has a wonderful, it has a little wine in it. It's only 20%. You don't have to keep it in the fridge though, because it's over that, but it's really wonderful. And it has these kind of mountain berries in it, as well as all the alpine herbs. So it has this kind of jammy taste to it. And I know Jake Parrott, who works at House Alpens, he's a big fan of this in a radler, like a beer and grapefruit drink. And sounds kind of unexpected, but it's delicious. The grapefruit plays really well with it. And then there's the category of Vino Amaro, or Amaro made with wine. Those are ones you traditionally would keep in the refrigerator. Card Amaro, I don't have on me right now, but that's a key one that's made with Moscato wine. But this one's really lovely. Pasubio is another favorite of mine. It's from a few years old, a new import to the States. And I love like the Amaro labels, like you see the context clues, the mountains. Like this also is very alpine-like as well, based on where the region is. But this has wild blueberries in it, and it just has. I had a drink in Los Angeles once with this and Lambrusco and a rosemary syrup, and it was just so good. So yeah, Vesubio equals blueberry bomb, says Kinley Jewett. I agree. And then we have Fernette. So a lot of you probably know Fernette Branca, which I have here. It's wonderful. Bartender favorite. They've done a lot to get people to do their marketing of knowing about Amaro. And this is more medicinal. It's mentholated, pepperminty, has a kind of a toothpaste vibe to it, all in a good way. But it can be tough in cocktails. And historically, there aren't, beyond those aperitivo drinks I mentioned, there weren't a lot of Amaro cocktails. There was the Toronto and the Hanky Panky, and those both called for Fernette Branca, but only a bar spoon worth. So it's really just as a flavoring. So these stronger Amaro, you would use in moderation in a cocktail. I would say shout out to Brooklyn Wine Exchange on Court Street. That is my local bottle shop. So, and the one thing about Fernet is, again, there's no rules, but it's all about the theme. So in this case, there is traditionally a handful of common ingredients you'd find in other Fernet. So in terms of other Fernet, I have some over here. This is a fairly new one on the market from Asheville, North Carolina. It's really lovely. It's loved. It's like Appalachian Fernet. And then our friends Maletti have a Fernet that came out last year on the market. Yeah, Edna Ryan, shout out. And then another Fernet I really love is made in Brooklyn, Arcane Fernet. I use this one in tastings a lot. It's very cool. But yeah, so I have probably like 15 different styles of Fernet behind me here. This is, I don't know if you can, this is the Fernet side, and I got the Aperitivo Bitters side. Yeah, and oh yeah, the Highland Amaro. I've got that back there. This is probably the most expensive one, the Fernet Angelico. It's Italian recipe, but it's now made in Switzerland. But it is it's definitely a sipping one. I wouldn't put this in a cocktail. This is like too elegant. You just have this neat on its own. Shelf life of Amaro. I see a question there. You know, unless it's the lower ABV wine-based ones you keep in the refrigerator. You know, I've written about vintage Amaro that we tasted from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's kind of scary to think that 90s is vintage, but it is. And a lot changes in the bottle, where it can last indefinitely. Things can change, like in the bottle, the flavors will change over years, you know, so we're talking like years and decades, not months and weeks. So all of these, the only thing I find sometimes, like the caps can get crystallized because they're sugary, if they're sweet. There's one brand in particular I have a hard time with, I won't name them, but so you really have to wipe down your metal caps or they'll stick, or a cork damage. But for the most part, they don't have to be refrigerated. You could do it for, like Fernet, if you're gonna do Fernet shots, you know, you keep those in the freezer like you might vodka or something. But I think for the most part, these are all very shelf stable. You know, things might happen. Like I've had Fourth Have, one of my first bottles I had, the color changed over a couple of years because they use hibiscus and I think rose flowers or rose petals. And so that's a natural dye. So that changed, you know, whether it's in the sunlight or in the heat. So those kind of things. But if you keep them, you know, out of direct sunlight in a pretty, you know, where the room's not going to go high, low in temp, which not everyone has that. But I've had some things kind of taste off, and some of those have been more of the American-made ones versus Italian ones. But yeah, so that's a quick answer to that. Okay, so on time, wow, we're getting there. Okay, I think, let me make another drink for you, if you don't mind. So this drink is from my book, Bitters, which, again, this came out in 2011, and I used some Amaro drinks. Since originally I wanted this to be a book about bitters and Amaro, and my agent at the time was like, bitters is esoteric enough, no one knows what it is, don't throw Amaro in there. And you know, how we've changed, you know. So this is one of my original drinks called the Autumn Sweater, and music fans might know where that title came from. This is a excellent Yo La Tengo song, which we are completely in season for this drink. And so this is a perfect time of year for this right now. It's a sweet drink, but it's bittersweet, obviously, and it has maple syrup in it. It has orange. It has two different warming bitters, and it has rye in there. So it's a good sipper, and I kind of tweak it from time to time. Like you know, the book, as I said, is almost 10 years old now. So I've lessened the maple syrup in the original recipe a little bit. I found that I got some feedback on that. And with the rye, the original drink calls for 1 ounce of rye, but I give you permission to put 2 in if you want in this case. So this is going to be a stirred drink. So we'll get the board. I don't know if you've watched David Leibovitz's Apéro Hours from Paris. He's a dear friend of mine, and he has this beautiful little mid-century pop-up table he puts to do this. Just behind BTS here, I'm using a Nike shoebox tonight, so it seems to be doing the trick. So shout out to Nike. Okay, so we're gonna put an ounce of rye. Rye, you know, is most people, as you always say, it's a little spicier than bourbon, has a different flavor profile. I'm using this brand from, I think it came out early this year or late last year. It's a Tin Cup. This is their rye. It's from Boulder, Colorado. So we're gonna use, or is it either Boulder or Denver? I'm sorry, I think it's Boulder. So I'm gonna put tonight, because I'm gonna be having this after you all leave, I'm gonna give it a full 2 ounces in there. So 2 ounces of rye, and then a half ounce each of Amaro Nonino, which is a kind of sweet orange, burnt orange, tamarind taste, and this Verna. So these two are both kind of sweet. So I'm splitting these, the difference in these, but they're also going to introduce this wonderful herbaceousness to it as well. So a half ounce each. There goes the Verna. I really trashed my kitchen after these. I guess I could use a helper. And then the Nonino, Amaro Nonino. So half ounce of that. And then the original recipe called for a half ounce of maple syrup. And I've taken that down to like a quarter ounce or even a bar spoon. So I saw whatever maple syrup you have on hand. I found this bottle. I forgot. A friend of mine, a food writer, Ted Lee, gave this to me last year, I think, for Christmas. Earl's, this is made of Connecticut maple syrup. I'm familiar with had it. Shout out if you have it. It's really good. So I'm just going to put a quarter ounce of maple syrup. Again, so it sounds like sweet, sweet, sweet. But once we dilute it a bit, and then because the book was called Bitters, we got to have bitters. So I'm putting a dash of orange bitters. This is Gary Regan's orange bitters. Rest in peace, Gary. We lost Gary last year, unfortunately. So I put like a dash of that. And then in the book, I call for maple bitters, which I was using a brand at the time, but I don't have it on hand. So tonight I'm going to use from Bitter Cube Blackstrap bitters, which is lovely. So we'll we're still in the same vibe. Okay, and make sure I didn't forget anything. All right, so then we're just going to add ice and stir this guy up. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope you're having a good time. I know it's kind of, like I say, it's strange to just talk to yourself in your kitchen with your cat walking around, but I'm really grateful you're spending this Friday night with us in Slow Food for working this great partnership out with Tennessee Press and Clarkson Potter. There's an amazing lineup of other chefs coming. This goes through November. I think it's 1 a week or maybe 2 a week they'll be doing. So definitely check those out if you can. And then so we get a rocks glass. And you can use I use an ice sphere in the book to make it look like a harvest moon. In this case, I'm using a big block of ice, just made with those silicone trays, very easy. And then pour this in there. That looks good. This was a really popular drink in the book. It was not even went on a few bar menus. And I pre-did this lovely little garnish. I even manicured it for you. We're gonna add this orange, clove-studded orange zest in there and drape it over there. So that is the autumn sweater. So not as good as Ed Anderson's photography, but I'm sure it's pretty tasty. So let's see it. Oh yeah, that's lovely. If I say so myself. Yeah, it has this kind of caramel sweetness to it, but it's very autumnal. You know, it is all about that vibe and really lovely. Okay, Giselle, how are we doing? Are there any questions in there that I should get to, or just?
Well, we have lots of questions, but I bet you can knock these down pretty quickly. So it's up to you. There's also So much enthusiasm. I'm loving this chat so very much. I don't think this is strange for anyone. I think it's absolutely delightful. So
Am I missing anything good?
oh, so
Anyone causing trouble?
I'll send you the chat so you can read through it when you're not
Okay.
this. But I think we all feel like we're on the other side of a bar, which at this moment might feel like a faraway experience and also just like a delightful time. So thanks everyone for putting your comments in here. I'll send them along to you, Brad, afterwards. I can jump into questions. I think that this crowd would be enthusiastic to see another cocktail.
Would you like to see one more drink, folks? Okay, so that's it. I thought normally when I've been on these, it's like make one drink and that's it. It's too too much time, too confusing. I also could do. Hold on one sec. Come
here. You have your own distillery cat.
Yeah, cool. Gotta say Lewis. Sorry, I know this is playing to the cheap seats, but this is Lewis, who Distillery Cats is dedicated to. 17 years old. He's still hanging in there. Got him as a 2-year-old in Seattle, and this is our 4th apartment together. But he's a good boy. But he's been walking around underneath the table here, so I thought I'd give him a shout out. All right, I'll do my hands quick while I tell you. So I'm gonna make right now this. As I mentioned earlier, the cocktails, there weren't a lot of classic cocktails made with Amaro. And a big thing about like why Amaro is so popular now is because of bartenders around America especially, but they started leading the charge, but all over the world now that, turn to these. Like in Italy, you would typically see the Amaro, several bottles, maybe a couple local ones, some national ones by the espresso machine. You'd have it as a digestif or do a cafe corretto for it in your coffee or espresso at the end of dinner. But now, bartenders kind of got excited about something bitter and weird and strange and all these great labels. And they led the charge in making these drinks, which I call like Amaro cocktails are often Trojan horses, where you order it at a bar and sometimes it says Amaro, which I don't like. I think you should always call it the brand. But like this drink we're going to have right now, tastes like a Manhattan, but there's a little something different going on. And if you taste that, and like that cocktail, then maybe you'll be inspired to try the Amaro on its own. And once you try that, so no, not making Black Manhattan. I've got a Black Manhattan is lovely. We're gonna do a little Italy. So what I was saying about these, now there's like new classic Amaro cocktails. The Black Manhattan, which is made with Averna and bitters and bourbon. The Paper Plane with Nonino, Aperol, bourbon, and lemon juice. And this one I'm gonna make right now for you, called the Little Italy. So this was a drink created by Audrey Saunders, who many of you probably know is an amazingly influential personality and woman in the cocktail movement. She had a bar called Pegu Club in the Lower East Side of New York City, near Little Italy neighborhood. Sadly, it's closed permanently now, and we all miss it, but her imprint and influence lives on, and she lives in Seattle now, I believe. And this is one of my favorite. I had one last night, actually. I live a block away from a great bar called Long Island Bar. And I went there with my friend Robert Simonson and Aaron Goldfarb, who are both cocktail writers. And my last drink was the Little Italy. So I like this as sort of a nightcap. So it's very easy to make, but at the time, around 2005, when she made this drink, a lot of these were new ingredients, like this, let me grab it. Like Rittenhouse Rye has become this bartender favorite. That wasn't the case. It was hard to get rye. We weren't really in that era when it was more of a bourbon. So rye originally was a very New York, Pennsylvania, East Coast spirit, but the resurgence of rye we're grateful for many bartenders, but Audrey Saunders played a big role in that by putting that in a lot of her drinks and influencing that. And then it has Cynar in it for the Italian element, and that's a nod to, and that was because it was fairly new import at the time to the States as well, and it's a nod to its Italian roots. And then sweet vermouth. I think she used a Cinzano or Martini and Rossi in the original. I didn't have that on hand in my fridge. Always keep your vermouth in the fridge. I keep it for a month. Some people say 2 weeks. Depends how fast you go through it. This is Carpano Antica. So this is more of a vanilla, orange heavy, cold weather vermouth in my eyes versus like a Dolan, which I normally use at home, or a Lustau. So it's these three ingredients kind of modeled like a Manhattan. So I'm going to make this for you now. if you'll let me. So this is the first time I've had to double up. Normally I'm making one drink, and now I've got like multiple shakers out there. All right, so 2 ounces of rye. We're going to use that Rittenhouse rye. Shout out to Rittenhouse. So 2 ounces. And then a ½ ounce of chinar. So chinar, as you remember, is you know, this doesn't taste like artichoke, even though there's a giant artichoke on the label. Artichoke is a key ingredient, artichoke leaves, but it has a vegetal quality to it, has a dried fruit, candied dried fruit notes, as well as this nice caramel sweetness to it. Really versatile. So we're gonna do a ½ ounce of chinar. Is anybody eating dinner yet? I'm kind of hungry. And then 3/4 ounce of vermouth, sweet vermouth. So this is a stirred drink. You would typically serve in a coupe glass or a Nick and Nora glass. All right, so we'll stir this up. An old spoon from one of my dad's old bar sets. It's not the best stirring spoon, I'm sorry, but. So when you stir, you know, it's to get the drink cold and mix it, of course, but it's also to dilute. I think, I've got the exact percentage, it's not 30%, but I could be wrong, but, you know, the amount of water coming off of this from stirring helps. And if I was a good bartender, I would have a little tasting straw right now and taste it, and then see like, oh, it needs more stirring, or my balance was off, or it needed bitters. I have, here it is, a chilled coupe from the freezer. And another element that made this an interesting drink at the time was we were still in the era of the neon, you know, maraschino cherry, like the kind on you see on a sundae. And Audrey helped bring the having Luxardo cherries from Italy brought in. These are Luxardo style. These were made by a distillery in Kentucky called Copper and Kings, which I think just got purchased by a major brand. And with cherries, it's always 1 or 3, never 2. It's a superstition with bartenders. So this might send a little meniscus action here, but oh no, that's nice. All right, that looks really good. I'm gonna have that too. So this is the Little Italy, Audrey Saunders, and this is a modern classic and a great. Oh wow, that's so good. It's an any time of day drink, but it's perfect for that last call drink, or the one which I did last night. That's my last drink of the night. All right, so I hope this was mildly entertaining. It was fun to like bang out drinks. Normally I'm talking so much, but to put me to work here and earn my keep was a lot of fun. I wish some of you were here. I probably couldn't have all of you, but some of you to enjoy these drinks with me right now. But Giselle, is there anything you need from me from our wonderful people tuning in?
Yes, I'll jump into these questions. I think we all wish we were there with you too. I'm pretty certain everyone in this room agrees. Thank you. Expertly moving from information to cocktail making, and in an impressive way. I kind of pull these questions into a few little groups. There are several questions about specific Amaros, but I'm going to leave that towards the end because I bet that most of that information is in your book. So I'm going to get to
and also my Instagram and social media is BT Parsons, and so you can always like leave a comment on the most recent post about this event or DM me, and my email is on my website, BT Parsons. I get a lot of those, but yeah, so we can, if we have time, we can dig into the minutia of that.
Excellent. So if your question doesn't get answered right now, then reach out to Brad on Instagram. So there's a couple interesting questions about you, and one is a good opportunity to congratulate you for winning the Spirited Award for Best New Book on Drinks, Culture, History, or Spirits from Tales of the Cocktail Foundation just last month. Yes, for this book.
Last week, yeah.
Last week.
Last Monday. The award is a giant. It's always when you. I mean, it sounds kind of weird to say when you win an award, but no, it's nice to have an actual piece of hardware. And a couple days after they announced it, it's a giant. They call it a charger, but it's a crystal plate, and So it hasn't broken yet, but I'm trying to figure out, I have to go get a collectible plate display to put it somewhere. But yeah, that was a great honor. I got a lot of nice feedback from that, and that means a lot, especially because that is an award. Tales of the Cocktail is all about bartenders and drink makers, and this is a love letter to that community, and I'm glad they responded like that. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that, and shout out to the fellow nominees in that category as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And congratulations.
But thank you, everybody.
Yeah, the question was kind of like what was your reaction? And I think that's it. I think that's really special.
Well, it was different this year because of COVID, everything like the beard nominations were like a press release, and you kind of find out that way. This was a similar thing. It was a pre-recorded video that they played at a certain time. So I think like Aaron Goldfarb, who also won, he's like, the first award I've won in my sweatpants. So it's kind of a, so a little of it's still wonderful. And I'm glad, like that's why last night I got together with Robert and Lizzie, who photographed Robert's book, and Robert's wife, Mary Kate, and Aaron, just to kind of, because you are in a vacuum. So I was like, yeah, great, but it's all virtual world. It still means a lot, but also there's so many bigger concerns out there that like you shouldn't be, running around like Rocky dancing, but it's a great honor. And it was, yeah. So I found out via text, like I didn't know when they were announcing it, and someone said, congratulations. And so the phone started lighting up, and then I confirmed it was real, and it was.
Excellent. Well, congratulations to you. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And on that note, there are a couple of people that are curious what your last call drink would be.
Oh, I often dance around that. In the introduction to the book, which, I set up last call, I say like a mixtape where, it's meant to be listened to or read in order to get these moods and tones that shift. But geographically, it's all over the place. It's not divided by state or by drink. So it's just kind of mood board of a book. But definitely read the introduction, because that sets the tone. And I kind of, I start by saying like it would be a Negroni or something in the Negroni family, like a Boulevardier or Espagliato. But then I kind of, my father was a big influence on me. He's been gone since 2008 now, and but he was a big, I don't want to say barfly sounds insulting, but I learned how to drink and understand what's like by going to the American Legion with him or the VFW, and so his drink was a Miller Lite in a bottle. So I always say like a cold beer is a great last drink for anything. When you like after this talking, you want a beer. But I think if it would be symbolic to have one, knowing if it was the real last drink, have that and have him waiting for me to clink the bottle. But the sad thing is we never know when our actual last call drink is. So, but when you play the parlor game, it's kind of fun to think about it. So I would say like, yeah, if it's a cocktail, probably a Negroni or a Negroni Sbagliato. But if it was a real answer, any kind of ice cold domestic beer in a bottle.
I love that. And I love the sort of ethos of the book, the idea of the book, because it's so much more than just naming one cocktail, which is clearly kind of what you're getting at there, and a cool thing to think about. Thanks for that. Let's see. So what was your first, I'm gonna couple a question here. What was your first ever personal experience with or introduction to Amaro? And then we have somebody that has asked that they're new to Amaro, and what would be, I think you said a gateway, Amaro, what would be a good thing to start with?
Well, I think, if you think about it, when I think it was a gentleman who asked about the Croucher liqueur earlier, for many of us, Jägermeister, whether we know it or not, was our first, entree to the world of Amaro. And it was probably a chilled shot at a college bar, and it had its place and time, but it's kind of funny now, the Jägermeister is a cocktail ingredient in some bars. But so I would say that. And then Fernette Branca was probably, I lived in Seattle for 10 years before moving back to New York in 2010. And I kind of started my cocktail education there, and then did like my master's degree in cocktails in New York. But I just remember seeing like Fernette Branca, Averna. I remember my first Negroni was around 2007, which is, it's embarrassing. It should have been much earlier, but the reality was a lot of people weren't drinking Negroni. So I distinctly remember drinking Negronis at the one restaurant called Tavolata by Ethan Stowell, and he turned me on to those. But in terms of, I'd say like Fernette Branca shots, which many bartenders did. but before that, if we count Jägermeister, I would say Jägermeister. And in terms of yeah, think about like whenever people ask about like how to build their liquor shelf, it really goes to like what do you like to drink. So if you like Manhattans versus gin and tonics or martinis, so if you like Manhattans, you're in a lot of luck because a lot of these Amari, plural of Amaro, but really it's confusing, play well. So I would say, you know, Averna is definitely a good one to start with. You could have it in a chilled glass, neat, on the rocks. You could put, you know, a lemon peel, orange peel, even a rosemary, things in it. But in cocktails, you could do like a black Manhattan. You can do, I have several Averna drinks and bitters and Amaro. And then try a similar one like Lucano or Maletti to sort of stay in that light to medium area. And then get a little more adventurous and try like Braulio and just see how unique that is and how different it is. But there's Ramazzotti, Chiaro, there's so many. This one here, this is like an advanced class one. I love this bottle. It's Amaro della Barista from Barnelli in the Marche region of Italy. And you know, the little context clues, there's bees and gentian flowers, because this is made with this raw honey from the Siberian mountains where, you know, so if you taste the honey, it tastes like the Amaro because of the pollination going on with the bees and the herbs. That one is sort of like, if someone orders that, a bartender knows you know your stuff, you know, where, you know, it's kind of a handshake of like, oh, okay, they know what they're doing. But that's a little more advanced because it's so unique. But yeah, start with Averna, Lucano, or Maletti, I'd say, and then, or Nonino even, and then take it from there.
Excellent, thank you. And on the other end of that, what I have two questions. I'm just gonna throw them your way. You, I think, answered the first one, which is that someone mentioned that they ask in a bar, what kind of Amari do you have? And sometimes they get a stare. And she's sort of saying, could you confirm that that's the right way to say it?
It's Amaro. Sometimes, you know, you can be Amaro, you can be like very Italian, but I say Amaro, and yeah, like people say, like if you're talking about the category, it's tricky because you say, you know, that bar has many bottles of Amari. It would be like the correct way, but you could. I don't like Amaros with the S. I know John DeBerry, who has a cocktail book out, Drink What You Want. He has a very fun attitude, and he says pretty much like, F it, call it Amaros, you know, and so call it what you're comfortable with. But yeah, Amaro and Amari means the same thing. It's just saying bitter and bitters is the difference. So like difference. But yeah, you were correct asking for an Amari list in a bar.
Excellent. And now we know. Now we can all sound like we sort of know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then another question is what a couple people are interested in what your favorite vintage Amaros are. Amari. Oh,
that's a great question. Yeah, I have some. I moved in March, and I got rid of, in a good way, by like donating to people. Like this is unopened. I will probably never open this, but like this was a gift from a friend. I just love that, you know, from the old label to the swell guy in the tuxedo. And these are like, you know, drinking vintage Amaro is fun. It's spendier, you know, like I know you could have a Negroni, a vintage Negroni. I know Dante does that in New York. Where it's vintage Campari, like from the 60s, Vermouth from the 70s, and a gin from the 50s. And I think it's like $65 or something for the drink. But normally at a bar, like back when we could have tasting menus or do a flight after service, normally an Amaro flight or Amari flight would be like 3 tastes, maybe a 1 ounce pour, 1.5 ounces for $12 or something. But then a vintage one might cost anywhere from alone like 15 to 50. But that being said, I would say this isn't, these become vintage, but this label's a little messed up. But you see, this is from 2000. I got this in 2000. I don't know when. It's a 2011 thing. But Braulio, which we briefly talked about, this is Braulio Reserva. So right now, this is only made available in Italy, unfortunately. But they make a limited amount of bottles each year. They're aged in smaller barrels, and so it's a bit more bitter, and it's much more herbaceous. But you can do a vertical of these from all the different years. I know some friends who have these through decades. So if you're in Italy, it's less than $20. But if you try to buy these in the States from online or from collectors, it could be hundreds of dollars. So this is probably the one I always, I call them suitcase bottles when I'm in Italy, like the ones I bring back. Always claim at customs, but I think my record is 15 bottles across three bags, and none have broke so far. But you probably, yeah, Braulio for sure. But I think the fun part is trying things that are gone, trying brands that are no longer around, obviously, but also doing a vertical of having I've done that with Fernet, where we've had Fernet from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And even though the recipe is the same, or purportedly, there's changes in the bottle. Like botanicals that were meant to be forward can tamp them down, and because the sugar can be stronger. Sometimes these vintage Amaro taste more port-like, and they have a different quality to them. So they change as they were from their original intention, but they take on a new character. I did a vintage tasting for this site I write, a magazine, online magazine I write for, called Punch. We did a round table of tasting, it's like 15, 16 different bottles through the decades, and it's so much fun. But yeah, it's a good thing to do. So it's like, some liquor stores, like in New York, there's one or two that have a small collection, but usually you have to go online to try to get a better selection and get them. But yeah, but a bottle of like average vintage Amaro from like the 70s or 80s probably could be anywhere from $50 to $75, So it's an investment, but compared to like 28 or 30, but it's fun to have. So yeah, I have mine are kind of sprinkled throughout, but yeah, it's so I definitely encourage that habit. Great question.
I love the idea of a tasting. I think especially with what I've learned in the last hour. And somebody in the chat, Melissa, mentioned that Fausto in Brooklyn has a great vintage.
Oh yeah, yeah. I haven't been there since I think they just started indoor dining, but they Joe Campanelli is an amazing Italian wine guru, and Fausto is great. And so what I love about what Joe and his team were doing there, they kind of had the vintage Amaro of the night. Like they had a few bottles, but it was always changing. So I think it was $12 or $15 for a certain amount of pour, but you didn't quite know what you would get. And the fun thing too, again, this is all going to change sadly, but I love when I always like would drop the bottle at the table so you can see it and like look at it. Obviously do it for the gram, and get it out there on social media, but it's also a way just to get information from the label. And it's a little special touch. So I think places that it's not about leaving the bottle for you to free pour. It's just sort of in some places we'll do an unopened bottle if it's new stuff. They'll just like leave it. But it's fun to like know what you're drinking and have a little more history about it without talking down to the guests or being too geeky, but just to kind of, and again, these talks I do for bars and restaurants, that's a lot of what I talk about as a service, and kind of like instead of just dropping a list of 30 Amaro organized in many different ways that no one's going to care or understand, you have to sort of say like, oh, are you familiar with Amaro? And if they are, you can have a conversation. If they aren't, you do a quick intro and then maybe suggest a Verna or a Mleti, and don't give them something that's going to tear the roof of their mouth off or make it very bitter or anything.
Excellent.
But yeah, Fausto, shout out to Fausto.
Some good information sharing happening over here. I have a question actually for me on the vintage note. It seems to me this designer in me is asking, there's sort of a look to these labels, and is that purposeful, or have they evolved to just sort of carry through this traditional vintage look? Is there something happening there, or is that just kind of what they look like?
No, I think, there's often, Amaro, especially like if you look at a lot of the vintage posters, the advertising posters, this was before TV, like in the early 20th century. They relied on these beautiful prints and posters, and like the Fernet, they have beautiful collections in their museum of their eagle, as their logo, and the eagle in different situations throughout the decades. But I think ultimately it was about advertising. It was about making your bottle stand out on the shelf, and they often would do these like context clues, like if it's an Alpine Amaro, there's mountains, or there's the artichoke for Chinar. But yeah, most of the labels, like Lucano, they call, I think they officially call her the girl with a basket, but the woman picking the herbs, she's always been there, but things have changed around her. So it's sort of like not Betty Crocker, where they modernize her every decade or so, but like you'll always see the woman picking herbs on Lucano. But sometimes it's, you'll see some Avernas change throughout the years. And some are like, you'll see, and then when it got into like mid-century, there, like the subway ads, the buses would be taken over with an ad for Ramazzotti, and there were amazing black and white commercials on YouTube for like Federico Fellini directed some major like Italian artists did the artwork for Campari. So there's a great history on that angle as well of sort of like, we have like famous people do music videos now, like Paul Thomas Anderson does high-end videos, and but to have Federico Fellini direct your your Amaro commercial is pretty cool. So yeah, so you can go down a rabbit hole on that.
He must have been a fan of that Amaro.
Yeah, absolutely.
A big pull. Thank you. And since you mentioned Fernet, I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions. And then again, if we can get to your question, shoot a message to Brad and see if we can get it answered elsewhere. Or grab the book, I think. What makes a Fernet a Fernet? You mentioned that there were multiple different kinds.
Yeah, so I have, I think I cut myself off at some point with that. Yeah, essentially, so Fernet, there's different, Fernet Branca, they're not, so Fernet, I have a bottle, Fernet Vitoni beat Fernette Branca to the market by, I think, a year or two. But Fernette Branca is the most ubiquitous, well-known, most marketed Fernet in the world. So Fernet is a style, Branca is the surname, but it's sort of how, Coke means soda, or Kleenex means tissues. But so there's different styles in there. Some can be more coffee-like, or some are more minty, or some are drier. But the big thing with a Fernet style is an elevated alcohol. So it's usually 39 or 40% ABV, while most Amari are in the teens to low 30s. You have this, dark brown, brackish color. And then it's the common ingredients. Again, there's no hard or fast rules, but there's usually peppermint or spearmint. Saffron is a big ingredient. The aloe ferox was a very interesting one. That's sort of it's this pitch black dried. It's the dried juice of the aloe plant that gets kind of rock hard, but it brings the bitterness, but the color to it as well. And so that's just a few of those. There's about 6 or 8 ingredients. And the aloe ferox, it's also in Lucano. And when I visited their distillery, they gave me like a Ziploc baggie of some to take home, and I forgot it was in my bag when I went through security at the airport, and it looked like I was a drug mule. So they made me throw that right out. But yeah, so it's just kind of, again, so like if you try a Mexican Fernet or a Brooklyn Fernet, it'll put you in the mind of Fernet Branca, but Fernet Branca is very distinctive. So you'll find those kind of like myrrh, saffron, and it's very funky ones, but they're not all minty, but there should be a mint element to it. But like Branca is known for being very mentholated. It has this kind of toothpastey kind of taste to it, but it also has a great, it has that kick, that 39 or 40%, 39% alcohol by volume will kick you in a good kick.
All right. I guess that explains why that was many of our first introduction to Amaro.
Yeah, because most people have it as a shot, as a shot. Right. A chilled shot of that is wonderful.
Yeah, kicking the pants. I first met Fernet in Argentina, which is
that's a whole other thing. That's the only other distillery outside of Italy is in Argentina. Argentina had a lot of Italian folks move there over the years, and so their love of Fernet went with it. And there's rumors that it's a different formula over there. Fernet Branca says it isn't. But if you do taste, I've never tasted it side by side, but I've heard some pros say, yeah, it's different. But I think people like saying that. Like with Braulio, people have said, Grupo Campari bought Braulio, I think in 2016 or 15, and everyone's like, the recipe changed, it's different, they changed it. And Braulio, like I've talked to like the Braulio family member, and they say, no. So it's like, I'll take his word for it. But again, they're probably the corporate policy of talking about it. But yeah. So.
Sure, yes. And then we can get really nerdy about the science of taste and how many other things go into your flavor perception that have nothing to do with the liquid itself. You could go far with that.
Yeah, all that super taster stuff. Yeah, and the big thing about Amaro too, Amari, is it's so aromatic. That's a big element too. When you're thinking about a cocktail, it's bringing bitterness, it's bringing sweetness, it's bringing herbaceousness. So you can sub it in for a vermouth. You can split it with a vermouth. But when I do Amaro tastings, we'll have like 10 or 12, when they walk in the room, they have tasting mats with all the Amari out, and the room is just like, with 50 seats, 20 or 50 seats, it's like this overwhelming beautiful smell. Like you want it as a cologne or perfume. So that's a big element of it. And seeing, I didn't pour them out tonight, but seeing the viscosity, some are unfiltered, some are mostly between like a brown, dark brown, some are reddish, amber colored, some are black, but they have this kind of murky sense to them, but they bring so much on their own, and especially in cocktails.
Excellent. I'm so excited to explore it. Let's go with one last question, or maybe two. One is
Okay.
just, is there a marker of when I need to put an Amaro in the fridge? Is there an alcohol level or something like that?
I've heard people say, like there is, for instance, this is new to the market. We had that Carpano Antica Vermouth. This is part of Branca's portfolio, Carpano. They're one of the oldest vermouth makers. And they released this bitter just a few weeks ago. So it's a Campari style bitter. And it's 25% alcohol, but this isn't wine based, even though vermouth is wine based. So this does not have to go in the fridge. But there is, I don't think I have a bottle right now, but Cappelletti makes a wine based red bitter, and that needs to go in the refrigerator. So I've heard, like I don't keep Aperol in the fridge, and I think that's only, like Cynar is only 17%, but because it has a spirit base, it's preserved, or not preserved, you don't have to worry about it. But that Pasubio, I don't put in the fridge, but I probably should. But Cardamaro, I do that too, because it's a clear bottle and it's gold color, and if you left it out, it's just going to oxidize very fast. So treat like wine-based Amaro like you would a vermouth, and you treat vermouth like a bottle of wine. But for the most part, I don't put, there's some like the French Amers. I have a couple over here, like Suze, you don't have to, but there's a few, like it's aperitif wine. So if it's a wine-based aperitif or a wine-based aperitivo or Amaro, that's what you would consider it. And those are usually less than 20% ABV. So I've heard people say like it's less than 20 or 17, it should go in the fridge. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say I worry more about if it's wine-based. Like all my vermouth, I have a couple bottles, and I usually buy them. I encourage people like buy the smaller bottles if they sell them, if you're not going through a ton at home, like you would a bar, and it'll last longer and taste better. So I usually have a couple of these like split size in the bottom of my fridge.
Perfect. So it sounds like we should just drink it.
Yeah, pick it up.
Great. And one last question, if you will. Yeah. I think this is an interesting one. Is there a consistent difference between the new style Amari, maybe made in the US, versus old style made in Europe? You mentioned a Mexican one. Is there a distinction between the two, or is it really place-based? And do you have any favorites that are produced in the US?
Yes. Yeah, I call out a couple. The Fourth Ave Spirits in Brooklyn. That's their aperitivo, but they have this lovely Amaro called Marseille, very complex, delicious Amaro. The Faccio Brutto I talked about earlier, they also have a lovely Fernet, very sippable Fernet. And this is like, there's lower ABV, so it's different, but it's really nice and sippable. But I would say, I'd say one of the more creative, a little dusty, sorry, Don Ciccio Fili from Washington, D.C. He has the deepest portfolio, and he's Italian. So, and his family were liqueur makers. So he brings that expertise into what he does. I think, when I was writing Amaro, I think it's like 3 years to write. So like 2013 or so, I was asking myself and others, like, with this craft distilling movement, why aren't we seeing more American Amaro? Like, why not a Pacific Northwest Alpine style? Or, now we have this Appalachian Fernet, which is one thing I said at one point just to myself, or a Southern Amaro. And we do, we have this one from Highwire Distilling, whose bourbon we use. They have this kind of sarsaparilla style, very sippable, drink-friendly Amaro. But I would say now we have a lot of different American-made Amaros. So the domestic Amaros. Italians kind of look on them they're suspect of them. I've like made a few producers taste them, and they were very critical of them, but they're Italian, and their family, they've been making them for 200 plus years in their family. So they're going to be that way. But there is sort of a just because it's craft doesn't mean it's good element. And I've tasted many American Amari that weren't quite ready for prime time. They kind of bottled them fast and put a fun label on it. And the other tricky part with American Amaro is the availability. Oftentimes something made in California is only going to be California, even with a distributor. So getting a distributor is very hard. I'm lucky because I write about it that I can get samples sent to me and try ones from all around America. But if I really got into an Amaro in Philadelphia, I'd have to go to Philadelphia to get it. So I think having a bigger distribution is important, because you could get great press or someone writes about you, but if you can't go to your local liquor store and buy it, it can be challenging. So, but I think some of the new Amaro, the American Amaro, are being made to be cocktail friendly, and so they have certain drinks in mind, like try this in a paper plane, try this in a Black Manhattan, which is smart because it sells more bottles than just sipping it at home and trying to get bartenders to adopt it. But it's tricky to get bartenders to adopt something, there's just so many Italian brands out there that have proven the test of time. To bring in a new locally made, American-made Amaro can be challenging, and some have elbowed out to the front and gotten in there. But you have to have a very specific drink to use it in and call it out in the menu, and that's a lot of valuable real estate for a bar. So it can be tricky. But I love the ambition. I love that it's happening. I just think you have to make sure, and they're often way more expensive. Like they can be north of $50 a bottle or $40 a bottle. And so it's important to go to a tasting. If they're at your local liquor store, that's often how it happens. A brand will go to a local liquor store, do a tasting, you like it, you bring home a bottle. But it's rare we just walk in and say, give me that, unless it's something really cool you've heard about, you're dying to try, or you know them. But yeah, I think Don T. Giuffili, Fourth Have, and Highwire, they were all early on in this and leading the charge and perfecting it and getting the formula right. And there's a lot of interesting things happening with it. So it's fun to be supportive of local brands too. And like you can do like a Brooklyn flight now and have like 3 different Amaro, 4 different Amaro made in Brooklyn to try next to each other. And people are gonna have different tastes, different favorites, but I try to be agnostic because I write about them, but I know most of these producers personally as well, or socially, so it could be tricky sometimes. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of ways to go, but I think it's also like it's gonna get to a point and then it'll, like the bitters market too, like we went from having a few orange bitters to now there's 30, 40 different orange bitters. Do we need all those? Probably not, but they still haven't hit that point where the ones went to the top and the rest went away. Like people were still like, let's make our own orange bitters and put it out there. And I feel guilty about that sometimes, helping lead the charge to that. But it's it's fun to do it for yourself as a hobby, but don't just slap a label on it and sell it at your farmer's market. You have to really perfect it, and it takes understanding maceration and distilling and the ingredients. And the people who I admire are ones who visit their labs and see what they're doing, and it's pretty impressive.
Excellent. I love that. Yes, this is bitters and Amaro is such a craft. It's so many more than 1 or 2 ingredients, and I think it's really interesting to know more about it. And like food, you have to taste through it to figure out what you like, it seems.
Yeah.
So I am really excited to get my hands on that book.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us and for letting us keep you here.
Oh, this is the last, yeah.
You guys can follow Brad on social media, and I will send you an email in the next week or 2 with a link to this recording, so you can refer back to it if something was mentioned that you didn't catch, and links to grab any of his 4 books and follow along on social media. This is, once again, just the beginning of our partnership with 10 Speed Press and Clarkson Potter. So we have 6 more authors coming on over the next several weeks. Next week, we have Sammy Tamimi and Tara Wigley of the Ottolenghi Restaurant Group joining us to make meaty vine leaf pie. I'm very excited, and that's on Wednesday. So check that out. You can just go over to the slowfoodusa.org website, and you'll find Slow Food Live. It's so nice to meet you, Brad. It's so nice to learn.
Likewise. Thanks,
This has been super interesting. I'm going to make myself a cocktail right now because it's Friday.
Yeah. And thanks. I'm sorry I couldn't keep up with the chat, but I'm glad so many people were engaged.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of gratitude happening now. To you, thank you for being here. I'll send you that chat so you can delight in it a little bit. It's a pleasure to have you. Take good care, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you all. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it.